likes me. Nobody likes me. But that's okay, cause I don't like y'all anyway. Man, I don't like y'all anyway.
We need to pay attention to all this stuff. And don't muddy the waters. Don't let your mind get sidetracked. Because you need to remember that when, it's going to be time to vote again soon. So it's going to be local elections, all this stuff, everything, all these elections. You have to remember that the Republicans would rather collude with Russians than collude with Americans.
Them Staten Island niggas still puffing them dust blunt.
Donald Trump is a white supremacist who enables white supremacists. No lie. I mean, that's accurate. It's an accurate assessment of the situation.
Them Staten Island niggas still puffing them dust blunt.
Dragnets. How do they work? Just say no. Yeah. Here's the problem with just saying no. You can go about your life trying not to do drugs, but you turn on the news and you see Wigmaster over there talking about public health emergencies. That's why drugs are hard to stop. Because of people like that. Big week. It's always a big week. Can't we please have an uneventful week? That's all I want. All I want is one.
Them Staten Island niggas still puffing them dust blunt.
Oh, Jay, why are you wearing that resist shirt? What are you resisting? Bunch of isms and trees. Bigotry, misogyny, racism, fascism, and sexism. The people here are the people on the South Shore, in the rich neighborhoods, the richer neighborhoods, not the poor neighborhoods, are brought up on bigotry, hatred, and classification of, societal roles. Who's in your house? Dyze in your house. Hey yo, what is the word, peeps? Welcome back into another Friday edition of Dyze in Your House, coming to you on Least Coast Radio, taped live in front of nobody. Because nobody is here, because nobody wants to watch me. We have a few things to get to. I just want to warm you guys up for what will be an action-packed J Pork's podcast this coming Monday. We've got a big one coming up. We're going to talk a lot about, Mueller's Russia probe. We're going to talk a lot about, a little thing called money laundering. And we're going to get into all of that in long form. Especially that awkward moment when Steve Bannon didn't answer questions. It's one thing to get subpoenaed. It's one thing to get subpoenaed while you're testifying. And we're going to get into all that on Monday on a brand new edition of the J Porks podcast. But what is this? This is what it is. This is Dyze in Your House. It's the warm-up show, the midweek show, the pre-show, the post-game, whatever you want to call it. The companion show. It goes along with Dyze in Your House. It goes along with the J Porks podcast. It's called Dyze in Your House. My name is J Porks. There are too many things that go on in the fascist regime that runs this little land we live in right now. And there's a lot that goes on. And since all of that goes on, it's hard for me to figure out ways to fit it all into one podcast a week. So every Friday at 6 o'clock on YouTube, and then shortly following 6 o'clock on iTunes via the podcast app, you can get Dyze in Your House. It's only 20 minutes. We keep it to 20 minutes. Well, it might be like 21, but we keep it around 20 minutes because we don't want to go long. We don't want to go off on tangents. I only go off on tangents when I'm plugging my other stuff, like me right now, when I'm plugging myself. And what you need to do to keep it locked, if you don't want to have to search around the internet and Google things, just follow me on Twitter. everything important. The platform I use most is Twitter. And you can get at me at JPorks. That's JayPorks. Or you can even get at me at Dyze in Your House. I got another Twitter page for things that are fun. It might turn into this podcast Twitter. I don't know. We will see. So this week I said Bannon, but that's not till Monday. We're talking about a shutdown. And that's what we're talking about this week. And right now, it is 1:35 Eastern Standard as of press time. This is not going up till 6. So, I'm talking about the possibilities of a shutdown looming. Things might get fixed by later. This podcast might be moot. It might be. There's a possibility. But as of right now, Republicans do not have the votes. They don't have the votes to keep the government open. And it comes to a couple of things here. First, the Congress needs to pass a spending bill because they haven't passed a budget. And they haven't passed a budget in a long time. Congress is supposed to pass a yearly, bi-yearly, whatever. Like, they have a budget for whatever many years, and that's how they base their spending. And they vote on it, and they pass it. That's what they do. But over the past couple of months, Congress has had to do, the Senate has had to do these, what's called these short-term spending resolutions. The things that they fund the government for a month. Because Democrats and Republicans can't get together on a budget that they agree on. And since there's not an equal majority, you know, it's hard to do the math. So, they signed one in December. There's one coming up Friday night at midnight is the deadline. Now, if it is not signed, the government will shut down. Now, first of all, Robert Mueller's investigation continues, even if the government shuts down. That money is not government money. It is an empty barrel of independent funds. So, again, on Monday, we'll still have Russia to talk about if the government shuts down. But the narrative that the GOP is trying to push onto you, the American people, the people who they think aren't smart, the people who they think aren't uninformed, and are the people who they think are uninformed, and the people they would rather be uninformed because they feel as if they can trick those people, these people who are uninformed, into believing in their policies that don't work, their policies that are all mostly on the wrong side of history. So, the budget needs to get passed, but they're not even close to a budget. So they're trying to pass another month spending resolution. Well, we have the things we have problems with is the DACA, the Dreamers, the immigrants who were brought here not by their own volition. They didn't come here. They were brought here as children. They're now adults. They are contributing to society, and we don't have a bill to protect them. We couldn't get one done separately, even though Republicans are in charge of Congress since January 20th, 2017. They're in charge of all three branches: House, Senate, Executive. Okay, so a year. They could not get DACA done. So if you hear Republicans say that they care about keeping the kids, the DACA kids in this country, the Dreamers in this country, they don't, and they're lying. Next point. CHIP, the Children's Health Program. CHIP pays for health insurance for millions of kids. Millions. Now, this is also this expired in October. Now, again, October 2017, CHIP expired. Kids are at risk of not being able to be treated for things that they have. Children Children don't have political views. I'm talking infants, babies, okay? And there's not going to be funding for health insurance for them. That expired in October. Now, since October, House Republicans, Senate Republicans, and the executive Republican, who have all been in control since January 2017, did not do anything about that. So if you hear a Republican saying that a government shutdown endangers these kids and they act like that they care about these children, they don't, and they're lying. Next, community health centers. I thought I heard Bernie Sanders say like 30 million people, or 1 out of 4 children get help from community health centers. Something, again, a bill that needs to be funded, a bill that needs to be passed. The funding is expired or whatnot. I don't know the exact language, but basically that's what it is. Community health centers need some money, and they're not being given it. House Republicans, Senate Republicans, executive Republicans have not, since January 20th, 2017, who've been in power, have not done anything about that. So, if you hear any House Republicans, Senate Republicans, or Senate executives saying that they care about the community health centers, community health programs, community health centers, they're wrong. They're lying. Next. Okay? So, that's a lot of things. And what they're trying to do is they're putting all of these things in a short-term spending plan instead of voting on them individually. Because if they did it individually, they wouldn't have an excuse because they have the votes, because they have the majority in the House, in the Senate, in the executive, in the criminal world. You see Paul Ryan, you see Mitch McConnell, they're trying to actually say that if a government that is run by House Republicans, Senate Republicans, and Senate executives, 3 for 3, control all phases, they're out there trying to say that if the government shuts down, that the Democrats are to blame. Hold on a second. Why didn't any of you get these bills done separate? Why isn't DACA a bill, stand-alone bill? Why do Republicans choose to attach bills like DACA and CHIP? Why do they make these bills wait until there is, a must-pass bill, that they can attach it to? Why? Why do they do that? To hold them as bargaining chips. CHIP is a bargaining chip. DACA is a bargaining chip. And they think that they can look Americans in the eye and tell them that the Democrats, who don't even have enough power in the Senate to have blocked one cabinet confirmation, not even Jeff Sessions was able to be blocked, and he spoke with Russians. Okay? Democrats have no power. They took away, they repealed all, Affordable Care Act, they got rid of that, individual mandate, yada, yada, yada. They didn't replace the Affordable Care Act, so it's kind of still there. It's still there, but they're taking away bits and pieces of it, and the Democrats can't do anything about it. They can't block it. They can't do anything, because they don't have any power. I just got an alert on my phone that, actually, I'll just go to the alert, that it says Trump invites Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer to the White House in hopes of deal to avert shutdown. So, if you're Democrats right now, Senate Democrats, what you have to, you have to make them add these dreamers into the bill. You have to make them fund CHIP, community health centers. What about Puerto Rico? People are dying in Puerto Rico. What about some disaster relief? What about that? Why don't... So, like, if you needed any more if you needed examples about Republicans not caring about Americans, there's no more examples than this spending bill that they're trying hard to get passed. Now, if Schumer goes over there and they cut a deal, you know, I can only assume that Schumer went over there and lubed up his ass with Vaseline. Because Democrats do have something here. They don't need this. They're not in control. They have things they want. And this is their only tool. This is the only tool they have to actually block something. Shut it down. If the dreamers aren't in, if there's no, you know, amnesty for all these dreamers or whatever, if there's no CHIP, if there's no disaster relief, and if there's no community health center stuff, and if there's the word wall in that bill, shut it down. There will not be a mention of a word wall. That is not a thing. If you want to pretend that you want border security, if you want to pretend that that's a thing you need, we'll give you some pennies for that. But you're not getting anything. Because I got news for you. The urban population is growing in America. Colored people, ethnicities, minorities, different color brown. They're growing in America. And that's good for people like me, because I like them. I'm a fan of the brown folks. Yes. I'm down with the brown, you darn tootin'. But seriously, like, so these people are going to get to vote too. And they're going to remember that 800,000 people, you know, dangled in the balance as Republicans who had full control of all three branches of government since January 20th, 2017. They're going to know that those Republicans didn't do a damn thing about it. All they wanted to do was make sure the military gets more money. Because the military isn't making enough money from illegal heroin operations out of Kandahar run by the CIA. Some of that is hyperbole. But they are. That is where the heroin comes from. FYI. The military isn't keeping the drugs out. The military is bringing the drugs in. Once you understand that, you'll start to really understand how American government works. Speaking of American government, the Russians may have infiltrated the NRA. And if anything is American government, it's the NRA and, you know, being side by side with Republicans. We're going to talk more about that on Monday, on an action-packed edition of the J Porks podcast, which is going to be full of Russian last names that I have no earthly idea how to pronounce. But before I get up on out of here, I have one thing. And again, Least Coast Radio on iTunes. You have to keep it locked. You have to keep it locked to Least Coast Radio on iTunes. Just search. Search J Porks, search Least Coast Radio, search Dyze in your house. You can search any of that on the podcast app or on iTunes on your desktop, and you will get every Friday you'll get a new episode of Dyze in your house. You can also search YouTube. It's on there. But also one more thing. There's an anti-abortion march outside the White House. Right now, as we speak. I have a couple of questions about that. One, do they realize that Republicans have all three phases of the government? They have the House, they have the Senate, and they have the executive? So they have all of those. So what are they marching against? Who's... You know what I'm saying? the government's being very anti-abortion right now. They're actually protecting. They actually passed a new bill, or issued some new rules, like adjusted some rules in executive order, allowing businesses to, you know, not supply birth control with health insurance if they don't want to do that. If it's against their religion. Doesn't matter that it's against, you know, their human rights. Well, you know, it's against their religion. Their little cartoon fantasy land religions that they believe in. Whatever. I'm just saying, but those women marching, do they realize that the people on their side are also in control of the government? So what are they marching for? What are they protesting? Okay, so I hear it's an annual thing. All right. So, also, they say that Trump is supposed to address them via satellite. Wait a second. Why are we encouraging this behavior? I thought protests are an indication that the government is doing wrong and that elected officials need to listen. This is a march where they're happy, so it's a celebration. You don't march. That's not the reason to march. You can't just take something that's used as a protest, as civil disobedience, and make it your thing. You can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. But, I mean, listen, you know, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, they're on the case. And, you know, East Coast Radio is too. I'm Jay Porks. Dyze in your house.